Namaskar. I would like to welcome you all on IRES Samriddhi International Webinar. Today is our 279 webinar, and I'm really grateful to thank all experts, senior dignitaries who have blessed us in our great journey of knowledge sharing from last 1.5 years, from May 2021, we have started our journey in 2020, and now 2021 has passed. So our 279th webinar is today, and we are creating awareness as we are blessed with Sri Anil Johri ji, who is former CEO of Quality Council of India, who has the responsibility of accreditation of GCP experts and GCP Institute now. They are planning. So I will invite him also for his blessings. Professor Madan Thangvelu, our guardian, Director and Chairman of Board of Governors of International Interdisciplinary Institute for Research, Education and Skill, which is going to launch an international standard GCP certification with all international level faculty. We are blessed with today presence of Sri Vishnu Prasad Sharma ji, former Principal Guwahati Ayurvedic College and President Vishwa Ayurved Parishad Assam, Sri Dr. Vishnu Priya Mohanty ji, Professor and Head in Goa Ayurvedic College, P. Sudhakar Reddy ji, Professor and Head, Mysore Ayurvedic College, Government Ayurvedic College, Mysore, and our respected speakers, Dr. Santanu Tripathi ji, who is a dignitary here in the field of clinical research, in the field of pharmacology. I don't know who is there who doesn't know Dr. Santanu Tripathi. He is a renowned name in our West Bengal and India. Very active, very dynamic, head of college, head of CRO, head of institute, what he is not. And Samajdar, he is clinical registrar in School of Tropical Medicine. In the meantime, Dr. Santanu Munshi, Professor and Head, Department of Pharmacology, School of Tropical Medicine will join us. And then Geet Agrawal, Dr. Geet Agrawal, who was with CDSCA to develop a software EEC for ethics committees, and now with Lambda Clinical Research CRO in Ahmedabad. So first of all, without wasting much time, I would like to hand over the charge of moderation to Dr. Parikshit Debnath. Dr. Parikshit Debnath, please.
Namaste. Good evening, everybody. I'm Dr. Parikshit on behalf of Independent Research Ethics Society, and we are on our 279th edition of Ayush Samriddhi International Webinar Series. And today we have a special occasion like that. We are celebrating the GXP series, and in that we are gathered together to the webinar for necessity of GCP. I would like to invite Professor Santanu Tripathi sir. I have known him from my childhood, and he is one of my inspirations in clinical pharmacology. And to introduce Dr. Tripathi, he is everything in the field of clinical pharmacology. He was attached to previously School of Tropical Medicine. He started the Department of Clinical Pharmacology there, and also started the course DM in Clinical Pharmacology. Now at this moment, he is the Dean Academic and Professor and Head of Pharmacology in Netaji Subhas Medical College, Bihar, Patna. He is also the Director of Clinical Research in John C. Martin Center for River Research and Innovations in Kolkata. He is a what you can say, he is best in clinical pharmacology, what we have known. And I would like to invite sir. Sir, please join us and give your deliberations and enlighten us with your knowledge and speech. Thank you, sir. Sir, the dais is yours.
Dr. Santanu Tripathi ji, kindly unmute yourself, sir.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So thank you very
We
much,
are
Dr.
unable to see you, sir.
Parikshit. Okay.
Yes, you are unmuted, sir.
I'm unmuted and you can see me now. Can you hear me and see me?
We can hear you, sir, but we can't
hear
see you. I think you are connecting.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Ah,
Yes, sir. You are
okay.
visible now.
Namaskar ji.
Okay, namaskar. Namaskar.
Namaskar.
So great. So it's great to meet stalwarts in Ayurveda. And I must thank Dr. Pawan Sharma, my good old friend, and also Parikshit. Thank you very much for the kind words. I don't know whether I deserve all these, but by saying all these good words, you have only proved your uh, soft mind and your greatness. I respect that. And I take this opportunity to offer my regards and respect to all the stalwarts in Ayurveda who are present today. I must admit here right now that I don't know Ayurveda. I am not an Ayurvedic practitioner, neither I am an Ayurveda teacher, but I have some respect, and I have, or rather, lot of respect for the science. It's a science, indigenous science of our country, of our nation, and for thousands of years, this has been practiced. So, of course, the so-called modern science, modern medical science, the otherwise which is referred to as allopathy, which is relatively much young science. Okay, but then there is lot of patronage, lot of sponsorship to this modern medical science, that is allopathy, as a result of which there has been advancement, there has been so much of acceptability. But then at the same time, we must not forget the indigenous ancient sciences in India, and one of which is the most prominent of it, which is Ayurveda. The name itself suggests the greatness of this discipline, and that is, it's not a discipline that narrowly tries to allay suffering or cure a disease. When you talk of Ayurveda, it's rather refers to the science of life. So it's not just talk of disease and ailments. It is the healthy living, the art of healthy living, and how we can actually. And again, it's not just human life. It teaches us how to live, healthily, and in consonance with, in terms with all other live creatures in the universe. So that's what I understand about what Ayurveda is. It also refers to the culture of living. So with all this, but then when you talk of GCP, the full form of which is good clinical practice, which otherwise actually means good clinical research practice. So what kind of conduct or what kind of behavior we must otherwise exhibit and demonstrate when we are trying to engage ourselves into what we call it clinical research. Clinical research, as I understand, is research uh, involving or rather with human individuals. So when you talk of clinical, that refers to human. And when you talk of human, we actually include both healthy human and the diseased human. So patients and healthy subjects. So, and then when you talk of research, why research? Why do you need to? Research is, in one word, it is actually a discipline of uh, generating new knowledge. That may be in any field. And when it refers to health sciences, then generating new knowledge pertinent to health sciences. So that is health research. And health research being conducted involving human subjects, human individuals, and with them, there must be some decorum, there must be some clear kind of guidance or guidelines, because human individuals are taking part in research, it becomes so very sensitive. Who is doing research? What is his motive? And for whom the research is being done? Whose interest such research would serve? All these questions, they point to the ethical tenets of conduct of research. If a human individual is taking part or expected to take part in a research, human research, clinical research, by such participation, whether he by himself or herself is expected to benefit, and what is the risk involved by his participation in research. Now, if you ask me to join in a clinical research project, at an individual level, I must be convinced or I must be aware of the fact that whether and to what extent I am going to benefit by participation in this research, and what is the possible or potential harm or potential injury that I may sustain by taking part in this research. And when we talk of such injury, it's not just physical injury, it could be any other kind of injury also, it could be kind of insult also, it could be kind of mental kind of operation also, or deprivation also, etc. So whether physical or mental or cultural or whatever, so what kind of injury I may face or I may sustain by taking part in this research. So all these actually points towards to the ethical principles or ethical tenets, the value system in conduct of research. Now, why we are discussing this today in this evening in this platform? When you talk of the Ayurvedic medicine or Ayurvedic science, Ayurveda, again, I may be wrong, there are much more senior and much more learned people, learned in their own fields, Ayurveda. So they may correct if I am wrong, but then my understanding about Ayurveda, it is an experiential science. Over centuries, the science has developed, and then this science is also applied science. It's not really a basic science, it's an applied science, and its development and growth has been possible only through application of certain principles, but then application from the very beginning. If we think of the ancient times when this discipline started evolving, it was, as we are told, that acharyas, they cultivated, they tried to gain knowledge about how to prevent, how to cure, how to relieve symptoms of people who are suffering from some ailment, and how to prevent such ailments at the very outset, how to promote health. So all these they tried to learn from their experience, and then such experiential knowledge they used to apply. Okay, and then they had very astute and keen observational power, observance, and through observation, each and every time they applied these things, potions, they also observed very keenly, and from that, whatever experience they gained, they recorded them, documented them. And if we think in today's time, the necessity of or the basic requirements in any research process, these are the three things that occur. So first you have to hypothesize that this particular thing or this particular action will be favorably bringing about some change, okay, in somebody who is in need of it, okay, and then you try to see it, then you apply it. First you hypothesize that this can do this, then you apply it, then you observe, and then you document, then you disseminate this information. This is all about research. This is what our ancient forefathers, they used to do in order to gain this knowledge, huge knowledge, and then they have documented them in the treatises. And that's how the science had evolved. And then, of course, this experiential discipline that has been further enriched by more and more acharyas in these areas, and there are some of them are otherwise very well known, which are, and accordingly they have developed those ancient treatises, which still today, which are also referred to. But then with the advent of the Western medicine or Western culture, okay, there were some influence. Initially, there was, of course, some attempt to destroy this, but then they couldn't do it. It was so strong, so robust. It could not be destroyed for that matter easily. So then what happened? They tried to coexist. And after independence, prior to independence itself, there was with the influence of the Western rulers, these Western system of medicine was otherwise established, and we are still continuing with that legacy. And given the kind of support, international support, etc., that science is developing, and that has almost become the mainstream medical disciplines. But at the same time, thanks to our own leaders of the country, ever since independence, we have understood the importance of this old science or Ayurveda, our own science, and so they have also kept the provision for the growth and development of this science, Ayurveda, at the same time with Siddha, with Unani, even with homeopathy. And then what we are now have a system of this Ayush, which is patronizing the development of newer knowledge. Now there are some issues here. The issues are that when Ayurveda was practiced in the early times, they were mostly personal experiences. The acharyas, they used to cultivate the different natural products, be it the plant-based or the mineral-based or whatever, and then they used to develop their own formulation also in order to apply, whether it is meant for oral intake or whether it is meant for application. So they themselves used to develop it, prepare it. So in today's terminology, we can call them extemporaneous preparations, okay, as opposed to pre-compounded preparations which are available in the market. That is the finished formulations that are available in the market. We can call them proprietary preparations. Now this propriety, okay, that means when this came into large scale commercial production, when this came into became popular, then the question is how the recommendations in the ancient treatise, the preparation or the development of the formulation of the different medicinal products, Ayurvedic products, whatever has been prescribed there, whether exactly in toto that is followed when you are trying to do a mass development or mass production of these products. Okay, these issues came up, and so there was a necessity for standardization. There was a necessity for Ayurvedic licensing system came up. Okay, and the licensing, the primary principle in granting the license was based on whether the manufacturer has followed of the formulations exactly following whatever has been otherwise recommended in the ancient treatise. So long that is done, they are giving the license. But at the same time, there was also some expectation and some legitimate requirement and demand that there is a need to further develop or further some kind of incremental development, whether that is possible even within the prescriptions of the Ayurveda. So that's the reason why there was a need for continuing research, and research in the line which otherwise even the proponents of the Western medicine, they will accept the evidence that are to be generated, that it is effective, that it is safe enough, so that you can then convince the people in the whole of the world that yes, this is primarily developed with the principle of Ayurveda, but then we have also proven, okay, following the same guideline, research guideline, we have proven, we have shown, we have demonstrated that it is effective and it is safe. And if it is shown, then why not you accept it? So from that angle, I think in this country also, the Ayush and Government of India, they have also accepted this principle, and accordingly, the good clinical practice guidelines has also been developed by Ayush, more or less in principle in the same line as the ICH GCP, that is the International Conference on Harmonization, later on which has been named as International Council of Harmonization. The guidelines in that E6 guidelines, more or less in the same tune in India also in Ayush, that the GCP guidelines has been formulated, has been framed, and it is expected all of us who are interested in doing research, clinical research in Ayurveda or using Ayurvedic formulations or for development of Ayurvedic formulations, we should also follow the good clinical practice guidelines, because in principle they cannot be different. When you talk of good clinical practice guidelines, basically it offers a standard, okay, standard for all kinds of activities that are involved in clinical research, starting from the development of the protocol, implementation of the protocol, enrolling, designing the study, enrolling patients in the study, okay, administration of the study products in the volunteers, taking consent from the volunteers, generating data, processing the data, analyzing the data, writing the report, okay, and dissemination of the report. All these activities, okay, there are clear SOPs that are there, okay. We need to follow these SOPs. The purpose is twofold, just twofold. What are the two purposes? One, to generate credible data, reliable data. This is one, that is the scientific motive of clinical research. And the second is to respect the autonomy of the trial participants, to ensure their well-being, and to respect their rights. So these are the ethical issues. So the scientific motive and the ethical motive, Okay, both these are to be given equal emphasis, and thereby if you can engage yourself in conducting the studies, keeping both these two things in mind, then only you are able to say that I am conducting this as per the good clinical practice guidelines. So this is the core philosophy behind good clinical practice. And then in order to implement it properly, and in order to ensure that the different principles, core principles, there are some 15 principles of good clinical practice. So each of these principles are otherwise to be properly applied in our attempt to conduct clinical research by following the by establishing good clinical practice. That's the purpose. That is today the mantra in when you think of developing a synthetic chemical based molecule or a biological, which are otherwise used in modern medicine science or allopathy. The same mantra is also applicable equally in today's time in Ayurveda or in natural products. Now, Government of India has also come up with some recent guidelines have come up that phytopharmaceuticals, there are some kind of more specific guidelines that has been given. I'm not going into that detail right now. But then broadly speaking, we can say that if whether or not, there are two broad things. One, what you are trying, that should be defined properly. If I say this is my product, you have to define the product, and the product must be uniform. How many times and whenever you are going to use it for whatever purpose, for whether it is in therapeutics or whether it is in research. Now the product cannot be different in different batches. So when you are doing research with a product from a given batch, and next time when you are going to apply it, okay, after you have generated good data or good evidence through your research, you say this product is great. But then when you are going to use the same product, apply that same product in the clinical practice setting, then the product changes. And that is quite possible in natural products, particularly in plant-based products. That means what I mean to say is standardization. Standardization is extremely, extremely important. That when you are saying this is the product, if it is a multi-ingredient product, if there are say 7 or 10 or 12 or 15 different plants, you have made a concoction, leaf of something, root of the other plant, bark of another third plant, etc. So ultimately, when you are making the concoction, we have to be sure that yes, next time when I try to do this, okay, they will also contain the same things. Okay, so that you have to ensure. How best that can be done, there are also procedures. There are different ways of standardization. Okay, that has to be followed properly. This is one part of it. So that means defining the product. And the other part is about the steps of the development process. Broadly, again, there are two things. One, whether it is efficacious, whether it is producing or it is causing what it is expected to cause, that is, it is benefiting, and whether it is safe enough or well tolerated. So these are the two things: tolerability and safety, and efficacy. These are the two things that you have to establish. And if we can do that, and through our research, if you can establish that, then only we can say that yes, this is otherwise can be applied now in routine clinical practice. Now one can question that in Ayurveda, the effectiveness of all these have been already established and they are already there since so many years, so many ages, and why there is a need to establish that? One answer is, one, to make it more acceptable to even more people beyond, say, our country. If we want to make it acceptable by throughout all over the world, then probably we have to talk in a language that other people will also understand. Okay, that is objective evidence. Okay, it is not enough to say this is already written by our great forefathers in the ancient texts, but in today's time, in order to convince people in other parts of the world, we possibly have to also speak in a language that they understand. And that is, when you talk of speaking in a language that they understand today's objective material science language, and that is what you have to prove by statistics that yes, it works in most of the time. Okay, and that is what is blending science, and then also you have to blend that with the ethical issues, that is the attitudinal issues. So I feel it is even more necessary today to really apply the principles of good clinical practice into our Ayurvedic research. And in order to do that best, all of us, all stakeholders of clinical trials or clinical research, they must get exposed to the principles and philosophies of good clinical practice. And the as I understand, the purpose of the discourse of this evening is actually to impress upon ourselves the necessity of good clinical practice. But then good clinical practice in itself is a huge discipline, I would say, and it requires more targeted and more focused discussion on different tenets of good clinical practice, discussing each and every principle in greater detail and how it can apply in our clinical research program, and what is its implications and impact in our clinical research practices. That has to be discussed in greater elaboration. So I suppose this organization led by Dr. Sharma, Dr. Parikshit Debnath, they will also be instrumental in having series of good clinical practice capacity building programs and training programs for all those stakeholders of clinical research in the field of Ayurveda and Ayush. I think with these few words, I'll stop. I would be very happy if there are some comments and questions. I'll try to respond to them. Thank you very much. Over.
Thank you very much, sir, for your inspirational speech. Excellent. And just to inform you, sir, that we are planning a GCP certificate course, all not for Ayush. It will be an international standard course with international curriculum. Everything will be of standard. So you will guide us for that course. Definitely, you are the leader of this clinical research. So we will definitely. I had discussed you with this concept before 7 months. I hope.
Okay.
So before 7 months now, this concept is conceived well, and now it is being led by Professor Madan Thangvelu sir from Cambridge, UK, and he is director and chairman of Board of Governors of International Interdisciplinary Institute for Research, Educational and Skill. And the first course will be of GCP certification course of international standard. So this will be planned for all, including Ayush.
That's great. That's
Dr.
great.
Parikshit.
Thank you, sir, for your lecture, enlightening us about the importance of GCP. And every time we hear from you, it's a learning process from us. And thank you, sir, once again. Now, I would like to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Samajdar, and he is at present as a working is in clinical pharmacologist from School of Tropical Medicine. He is also the consultant of diabetes and allergy asthma therapeutic clinic in Kolkata. He has done DM clinical pharmacology, and as we are acquainted from previous times, as I know him, he is a budding and very good scientist also. Right? He has published many research papers, and He's been working on the field of clinical pharmacology for many days. And without wasting time, I would like to call upon Dr. Samajdar. Thank you for coming here and giving your precious time. So I would like to hear from you. The dais is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Debnath. It is a real honor for me. I am really thankful to Professor Sharma for giving me this opportunity to share this e-dais with this galaxy of faculties, I must say. And again, it is a real honor for me to speak on the topic like good clinical practice after one of the author in this country, that is Professor Santanu Tripathi sir, who is also my mentor, my guide on this particular topic. So before going to the topic, I just want to share one question in the chat in this slide. I think everyone can see this. Is it visible?
Yes, it is visible.
Okay, so right now I want all the respected delegates to write this in the chat box: your age, your gender, name of your department at where you are working, the institute, and please write down the worst area of your department which needs urgent improvement. Like it can be a postgraduate teaching, undergraduate teaching, staff discipline, lab works, or patient care activities, or any specific research works. So please submit it now. We will analyze it later. So thank you once again for giving me this opportunity to talk about good clinical practice and what is health definition. It is the physical, mental, social well-being, and also one important well-being that we often miss, that is the spiritual well-being. And Ayurveda is one of the science that can perfectly integrate all these four aspects: physical, mental, social, and also the spiritual well-being. But again, as Professor Tripathi sir has clearly mentioned the importance of evidence-based medicine, and in the evidence-based medicine, what is important also to generate data to have good evidence in the level of literature perspective, and that should be a statistically sound too. So for that we need clinical research in this field also. So what is GCP? It is a good clinical research practice, and as per the ICH E6 definition, it is the standard for the design, conduct, performance, monitoring, auditing, recording, analysis, and reporting of the clinical trials that provides assurance that the data and the reported results are credible and accurate, and the rights, integrity, and confidentiality of the trial subjects are protected. So there is two parts. One is the data part. That data should be, the results should be credible and accurate. And number two part, most important part, is the rights, integrity, and confidentiality of the subjects. So there are few atrocities, and the atrocities causes some knee-jerk reactions which give us some ethical principles. So I am not going in details of these all atrocities. You will search in the net. It is well available in the internet. Just to see how a person, a prisoner, was exposed to cold water until he died, to see the physiologic changes that happen into the prisoner's body. So this type of cruel clinical research was happening, and that is why we need some knee-jerk reaction, and with that we got some different laws and ethical guidelines. So one of the most important report, that is Belmont Report, which is very important to understand the ethics related to clinical research. It has three parts. Number one, the respect for persons number 2, the beneficence, and number 3 is the justice. So what is the respect for persons? That means the autonomy of the individuals, and specifically we should protect those who has a diminished autonomy, like prisoners. Next part is beneficence. What is that? We need to maximize the possible benefits and minimize the possible harm. And above all, do no harm, that is maleficence. And number 3 part is the justice. Justice means subjects should be selected fairly to ensure that the benefits and burdens of medical research are evenly distributed. So autonomy means each person should be given the respect, time and opportunity necessary to make his or her own decisions. Beneficence obligates the researcher to secure the well-being of all study participants. And justice, though it is a difficult and complex ethical issue, but attempt should be made to distribute the risk and benefit fairly without bias. So who should bear the risk of a study and who should receive its benefits? That participants should not be selected due to class, socio-economic status or race unless that is justified by that particular study objectives. So International Conference on Harmonizations of Technical Requirements for Registration of Pharmaceutical for Human Use was conducted in Belgium. The first time the conference was done, where the primary participants were USA, European Union and Japan, and there were some regulatory and industry representatives also there. Canada, Australia and Nordic countries play the role of observers, and WHO acts as facilitator, and that was the conference from where the very concept of GCP came. So what is the purpose of GCP? As already described in the definition, there is 2 parts. Number 1 is the quality data and number 2 is the ethics. And here the ethics does not mean only the morality. Someone told that ethics is a multiplied product of 2 M's. One is morality and another is materialism. So materialism is also important. And if materialism is 0, then maybe that research has a very moral, research is conducted in a very morality wise. But as the materialism is 0, as the science behind that is 0, then ultimately the product will be 0. So ethics will be 0. So we need to keep in mind that ethics is equal to a multiplied product of materialism and morality. So what is quality data? Quality data means data and reported results are credible and accurate. And ethics generally also we can say like this: rights, integrity, confidentiality of the trial subjects are protected or not. There are 13 principles of GCP. While doing any clinical research, we should think this well. Number 1, the study should be done in a principles of autonomy, focusing on autonomy, beneficence and justice. So that study should be conducted in an ethical way. There should be a proper assessment of risk versus benefit. And it is also important to note that subjects should be given more importance over science and society. So for the sake of science, we cannot expose a subject in a very high risk. So this is very important. Subject, the right of the subject, it should be the first thing. Adequacy of the pre-existing information. So when I am doing a phase 2 clinical trial, there should be adequate data on phase 1 clinical trial, the preclinical studies, then we can go for phase 2 clinical trial. So this is very important. The pre-existing information, that should be adequate. The scientific validity. So bad science is equal to bad ethics. There should be an independent review. So that is the role of institutional ethics committee, and that should be done in a proper way. The medically qualified care should be there with all clinical research, and we should have a trained and experienced personnel. Giving an example, I am doing one study on phase 3 clinical trial on some dental prosthesis. So there should be a dentist to do that particular clinical trial. One gynecologist cannot be a principal investigator for that particular clinical research. Informed consent is very important. I am going to tell you something more on this particular thing, because this is a very integral part of any clinical research, if time permits and Professor Sharma give me the permission. Next part is efficiency of information handling. Again, for data credibility, it is very important. The confidentiality of the research participants, this is their right. The drug accountability. Here comes the role of GMP. Again, Professor Sharma is doing an excellent job to teach this all topics, including the good manufacturing practice. So whatever drugs we are giving, we are using in the clinical research, that should follow the objective of good manufacturing practice. And ultimately, there should be a quality through systems and procedures. So there should be a quality control and quality assurance. So basically, when you ask that if this clinical research you are conducting is in a right way or not, in ethical way or not, then we need to ask one question, that do unto others what you would like others to do unto you. So you have to sit in the chair of the participants and think from their side that whether your clinical research is going in a right way. And though these lines are maybe what you can see in the screen is 100 or 200 years old, but we had a long back, our teachers told, our ancestors told this sloka, that Atmana Pratikulani Pareshuna Samacharet. So this same language, this same ethos, if we have, then I think the clinical research will be in a ethical way. There should not be any deviation from the clinical research. So this is the clinical research, how we can differentiate between experimental study and observational study. So when I am as an investigator assigning exposures, then it is an experimental study. And if it is not, then if I am just observing without assigning the exposure, then it is an observational study. And there are different types of observational study. It can be analytical, descriptive, cohort, case control, cross-sectional. But if I am assigning exposure as investigator, then it is an experimental study. And if it is random, allocation is randomized, so then that is a randomized control trial. If it is not, that is a non-randomized control trial. And for all those observational study, we have one good guideline that given by ICMR. So this we should all follow. And for experimental study, this is the law, we can say, the New Drug Clinical Trial Rule 2019. So this we should all follow. So with that, what is clinical trial? It is a systematic study of a new drug or any investigational new drug in humans to generate data for discovering or verifying its clinical, pharmacological or adverse effects. That means the safety profile, with the objective of determining safety, efficacy or tolerability. And who are the stakeholders of clinical trials? Again, the most important stakeholder in clinical trial is subject. So we should not forget that subject is the most important stakeholder. Yes, the clinical trial should be initiated from the person, that is the sponsor, and they will ask the regulators to give them the permission. They have some helping hand like CRO, SMO like thing. Sponsor will decide who will be the investigator, and investigator also there is a role of site administrator. The investigator, site administration and sponsor, they will make a agreement, tripartite agreement. Then there will be a ethics committee submission. So for that, there can be an independent ethics committee or institutional ethics committee from where the investigator should take the permission to initiate the clinical research. And we can see the role of subjects. Investigator and subjects are related. We all know for clinical research we need subjects. But subjects, if any harm happen, they have every right to talk with the institutional review board or institutional ethics committee. And that is the role of ethics committee, to hear the subject's voice also. Now coming to my last part, is there any more time, or I can stop here? Please let me know.
Time is there, doctor. Please continue.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. So informed consent process. So here I just want to say this is a process, because it is not only sign that has been done by the research participants on the consent form. This is an ongoing process, ongoing discussion. So maybe a person, maybe a participants can sign at the beginning of the study, but while doing the follow-up, he may think that I am not want to continue with this study. So he can change his mind and can withdraw himself from the study. So this is a very important point, because also from the perspective of the investigator, it is our role. If some study was conducting with COVID-19 vaccine, and what happened after 3 months or 4 months, we got some new information that this COVID-19 vaccine may cause this type of adverse effect. So this is our responsibility to tell our research participants that yes, there is a chance of this type of new risk. So it is your right to continue to be in this study or not. So this is the thing of what I just want to tell or impress all of you, that informed consent is not a one-time thing, it is a process. And this is the way by which we can protect individuals' autonomy, providing the relevant information to potential participants, ensuring the information is comprehended by them, and assuring the voluntariness of the participation. So there is two parts. One is patient participation or participant information sheet, and then that is the informed consent form. And these are the two information brochure, that is ICMR guideline and the new drug clinical trial rule, where we will get the how to write the or prepare the informed consent document. So which is most important to be written in the informed consent document, that the statement mentioning that it is research. So there should not be any therapeutic misconception. It is research, it should be very much clear cut, and that should be written in a simple language. The expected duration of the participation and frequency of the contact with estimated number of participants to be enrolled, types of data collection and methods, that all should be written there. The benefits to the participant, any foreseeable risk, discomfort or inconvenience to the participant, the confidentiality of the records, these all need to be written in the informed consent document. Also, the payment, the reimbursement issue, the free treatment and the compensation in case of research related injury and harm, the freedom of the individual to participate or withdraw from the research at any time without any penalty or loss of benefits to which the participant would otherwise be entitled. So this is a very important message that should be also written in the informed consent document. And the identity of the research team, as we had already mentioned, the communication can be there between the individuals, the research participants, and the institutional ethics committee. So there should be a clear-cut mention of the ethics committee members' name, chairperson, member secretary name, and their helpline number. There are some other points I am not going in details, but what is important, if there is some insurance coverage, that should be written there. Any foreseeable extent of information, any stigmatization condition, that need to be written. So sometimes these type of questions may arise when a participant is willing to participate, but not willing to sign or give a thumb impression. So what can be done? So can I straight away remove that participants to be involved in the research? I think no. There is an option. If I am not willing to sign or give a thumb impression, so in presence of impartial witness and the research team, principal investigator, there can be a provision of audio-visual recording, including all the three in one frame, and the participant can verbally give the consent, and that should be recorded by the audio-visual wing. And this should be done with from prior permission from the ethics committee. So this thing can be done. So this is one question that just I want to share with all of you, that in a study, you enroll a participant who is 17 years and 11 months old. You take his sign on the assent form and also take his mother's sign on the consent form. So at the time of site monitoring after 3 months, the monitor asked to see the ICD. You show the assent form along with the consent form. Now comment what was wrong, if anything. So anything wrong happened here? If you have any comment, you can write down in the chat box. We can see later. Now going through the consent of parent or legally applicable representative. So generally one or both parents should be there. One parent or legally applicable representative may be considered sufficient in case of clinical research where no more than minimal risk or that offers direct benefit to the child. So this can be done, or sometimes consent from the both parents in case of more than minimal risk or offers no benefit to child. So in that case we need to take the consent from both parents. Only one parent's consent acceptable, other parent is deceased, unknown, incompetent, not reasonably available. So then we can take only one parent's consent. So parent or legally applicable representative information sheet that contains informations on different aspects, research on sensitive issues related to neglect or abuse of a child, the EC may waive the requirement of obtaining parental or legally applicable representative consent and prescribe an appropriate mechanism to safeguard the interest of the child. And this is the role of ethics committee. And what is important on assent, there is no need to document assent for children below 7 years old. But when the children between 7 to 12 years, there should be a verbal or oral assent. And that must be obtained in the presence of parents and should be recorded. For children between 12 to 18 years, there should be a written assent and that should be obtained. And assent form also has to be signed by the parents and or legally applicable representative. So these are the important considerations for assent. And what is sometimes important, we need to be very much, we should give emphasis on the language of the assent form. We should not become very, we should not use a very discomfortable English in that assent form. It should help the child to understood. And one thing is important, that we should respect child's descent also. It is not only like that, it is just a customary thing. So if a child is not giving the assent, if the child is dissenting, then we should respect that. So now if we go by this case, what happened? 17 years, 11 months. So after 3 months means the child becomes an adult, 18 years course. So this is the way. In this case, you need to have reconsenting because the child becomes now adult. So that old ICD will not solve the purpose. So this is the way, this is the thing that has been done wrong, and that should be corrected. So a reconsent should be there. Now you can see in this participants informed consent, what are the mistakes that has been done. Generally, the signature of the participant place, there was a LTI. Okay, we can understand, no problem. The patient can be illiterate. But what happened? In the place of impartial witness, there is also LTI. So is it acceptable? Who are the impartial witness? So that is an important one. So impartial witness should be a literate person. Otherwise, it will be difficult to say. And the impartial witness should be signed in that area where we need the language of that particular area should be understood by that particular impartial witness. And impartial witness is not like that. I am doing a clinical research, and some stuff like one nurse can be act as a impartial witness. So that cannot be possible. So this is the thing we should remember, that impartial witness is not related to me, not related to my research participant. So that is a very important thing. I think I want to stop here because paucity of time, and I am again there are some other cases, but I just want to stop here because paucity of time. I want once again thank you all for giving me this opportunity and for this presentation. I am really thankful to Professor Santanu Tripathi, who is my guide, my mentor, and also I am thankful to Professor Urmila Khatte, who was a very renowned face in the field of ethics and clinical research. So I am really thankful to her also for giving me opportunity to know from her also. So thank you once again.
Thank you, doctor. Excellent and brief presentation, nicely comprehensive. Great.
Lead देना.
Dr. Parikshit. Now I would like to request Dr. Geet Agrawal. Dr. Geet Agrawal was in CDSCA THSTI, who was developing software for EEC, that the software name. Now he has joined before few months to Lambda Clinical Research, Ahmedabad. So welcome, Geet. Welcome.
Thank you. Sir, just give me 2 minutes. Am I audible to all?
Yes, you're audible.
Yeah, sir. Good evening, sir. So I am Dr. Geet, and I have done I am Ayurveda graduate from Kanpur University and have done post-graduation in clinical research from Crema, New Delhi. So my total experience is around 12 years. So I have been part of some of the clinical trials in vaccine, then Ayurveda clinical trial, then cosmetics, and some of the cardiology clinical trials. Currently, I am associated with the psychiatric clinical trials in Lambda Therapeutic Research. So, sir has given me this opportunity to present something about why the GCP certification is necessary in every 3 years. So, mostly I thought that the part has been covered around like why GCP, what is GCP, and why the GCP certification is necessary. So I think I don't want to like need to touch upon those points, but we know that they in history, like there are some uh, you know, something happened like which is not ethical as per in terms of clinical trials. So that's why the GCP guidelines has been introduced. So there are several changes, and the recent changes are NDCP rules 2019. So why GCP guidelines are required? So GCP guidelines ensures clinical data generated are verifiable, accurate, and reproducible during a trial. Compliance with GCP is necessary for advancement in scientific knowledge and assurance of public well-being, safety, and confidentiality. So basically, all the 13 principle lies in this definition. And the why it is necessary to have like clinical trial, so like GCP certification in every 3 years. So my personal thought is that uh, because there are some new guidelines, some new changes in every few years, and the guidelines are changes. So basically, every investigator who is part of clinical trial or clinical coordinator or CRAs, they need to be updated, and and they should gather some of knowledge with that particular guidelines. So suppose there are some new trials and they are not trained, new guidelines, and the investigator or CRCs are not proper trained, and if they are part of clinical trial, there are chances that they will miss something and they will do inappropriate research. So that's why I think it should be conducted in every 3 years, and PIs and all the clinical staff, they have to be like updated and do a good research. My thoughts on that only.
That in brief you have explained nicely, no doubt. But in next webinars, we will be eager to listen you well, as today's time is now.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Yes. Time is short.
Thank you, Dr. Geet. Thank you, Dr. Geet.
Yes, sir.
I would like to request now our guardian, Professor Sri Anil Johari ji. He is the former CEO of Quality Council of India, and he is the leader to accredit GCP courses and GCP persons and institute. So we would like to have blessings of Sri Anil Johari ji for his valuable opinion. Sri Anil Johari ji. Am I audible to you, sir? Sri Anil Johari ji. I hope my voice is. Am I audible to you, sir? In the meantime, I am contacting with him. Now, today, 3 lessons are definitely learned very much.
Pawanji, Sriram Vaidyaji has raised his hand. So.
Yes. Srinath ji, boliye. Sriram ji, boliye, please. Whether Sriram ji, kindly unmute yourself and start discussing. Whether Sriram ji. वैसे श्रीराम जी आप कुछ बोलना चाहते हैं? If yes, kindly unmute yourself.
I think he's having some difficulty with the mobile phone.
Yes.
Shad. Rajiv ji, we looked for you yesterday.
Yes, Dr. Rajiv ji, please.
बताओ जी, नमस्कार जी, नमस्कार. आपकी तरफ से भी सुने थोड़ा कि
सर आवाज आ रही है?
बिल्कुल जी, बिल्कुल।
सर पहले तो सभी को नव वर्ष की हार्दिक मंगल कामनाएं। नए साल में भी ये श्रृंखला ज्ञान गंगा अनवरत जारी है, इसके लिए सभी को साधुवाद। हमारे मदन सर के डायरेक्शन में पवन शर्मा सर द्वारा और परीक्षित जी और सारी टीम के द्वारा जो एक ज्ञान गंगा का प्रवाह चल रहा है, ये निश्चित रूप से प्रशंसनीय और साइंटिफिक कम्युनिटी के लिए एक असेट है, जिसको हमें कहीं ना कहीं पूरे साइंटिफिक वर्ल्ड में हमें इससे लाभ मिलने वाला है।
मैं अब अपने आदरणीय अनिल जौहरी जी से प्रार्थना करता हूं कि अनिल जौहरी जी कृपा कर हमें जीसीपी के बारे में। अनिल जौहरी जी हैज ए लॉन्ग बायोडेटा, long experience in Quality Council of India in various designations. He has headed a very long list of committees, and recently he is the leader of committee which has been constituted for accreditation of GCP personals and GCP institutes. Welcome, sir. I welcome you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Welcome, sir.
नमस्कार आप सभी को मेरी तरफ से। आई एम हैप्पी टू जॉइन दिस प्रोग्राम आउट ऑफ प्योर इंटरेस्ट इन माय न्यू इंटरेस्ट इन जीसीपी। ना तो मैं आयुर्वेद का एक्सपर्ट हूँ, ना मैं जीसीपी का एक्सपर्ट हूँ, ये साफ कर दूं शुरू में ही, पर इसलिए कि सर्टिफिकेशन का एक्सपर्ट जरूर हूँ और उसकी वजह से डिफरेंट सेक्टर्स में मुझे काम करने का मौका मिला है और आयुष इज वन ऑफ देम और जीसीपी इज अनदर। तो ये लास्ट ईयर सीडीएसए, अभी ये डॉक्टर गीत शायद आपने कहा सीडीएसए में काम करते थे, तो सीडीएसए ने ही इनिशिएट किया ये प्रोसेस कि जीसीपी के सर्टिफाइड प्रोफेशनल्स का सिस्टम बनाया जाए और ट्रेनिंग भी जो है वो क्रेडिट हो, बिकॉज ऑल काइंड्स ऑफ ट्रेनिंग इज बीइंग गिवन एज आई अंडरस्टैंड ऑन जीसीपी। तो उसको स्टैंडर्डाइज करके और उसकी बेंचमार्किंग करने की आवश्यकता महसूस हुई। So a committee was constituted which I was asked to chair, but there were a lot of GCP experts there. और उसमें we have now a scheme in place which is on the website of CDSA, THSTI, whereby a basic competence standards has been drafted and developed based on ICH। मैं सुन रहा था कि ICH को reference कह रहे हैं, plus CDSCO के जो रेगुलेटरी रिक्वायरमेंट्स हैं उन दोनों को बेसिस बना के एक कॉम्पिटेंस स्टैंडर्ड बनाया गया है। उसकी बेसिस पर एनी इंडिविजुअल हु हैज दैट नॉलेज ऑफ जीसीपी as given the competence standard can be evaluated and certified as an individual. And second system is that of training. Minimum 2 days शायद रखा गया, but it can be longer on GCP, again built around that जो नॉलेज मैट्रिक्स तैयार किया है, कॉम्पिटेंस स्टैंडर्ड जिसे कह रहे हैं, उसी की नॉलेज जो है वो इम्पार्ट करने के लिए ट्रेनिंग का सिस्टम, अक्रेडिटेशन सिस्टम भी सीडीएसए में किया गया है। जो जीसीपी प्रोफेशनल सर्टिफिकेशन है, दैट विल बी डन बाय इंडिपेंडेंट बॉडीज, नॉट बाय सीडीएसए डायरेक्टली। सीडीएसए विल अप्रूव इंडिपेंडेंट बॉडीज। In fact, one of the bodies is being assessed tomorrow, so hopefully the first body will be in place by middle of this month, whereas the assessment of training institutions will be done directly by CDSA. So this is the broadly the scheme which has been done, and Dr. Sharma has been talking about creating a training institution. So I am hoping that GCP training, he has already said, will be part of it, that this training institute will also come up for accreditation, so that we have number of training institutions accredited as per a common standard in place. That's all I wanted to say as far as GCP is concerned. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. Excellent guidance. Definitely we will be in touch with you for all the processings and guidance. I would like to request you to have your blessings as Board of Governor member. This institute is absolutely non-profitable, and we will be benefiting the society by systematic education as per the government guidelines. Definitely, we will achieve our target very soon. Thank
And
you.
sir,
Certainly,
like
all support will be there. I am happy to support you in any way. ये भी बता दूं क्योंकि आप सब आयुर्वेदा के एक्सपर्ट यहाँ पे हैं लार्जली कि मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ आयुष ने एक सेपरेटली एक आयुर्वेदा ट्रेनिंग कोर्सेज को क्रेडिट करने का सिस्टम भी डेवलप किया है, जिसमें भी मैं इन्वॉल्व हूँ, और it has led to now creation of a new organization called Ayurveda Training Accreditation Board, ATAB. उसका कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन हो गया है, एक एग्जीक्यूटिव बोर्ड है उसके टॉप पे, उसमें भी आई एम फॉर्चुनेट टू बी मेंबर ऑफ द एग्जीक्यूटिव बोर्ड एंड आई एम फॉर्चुनेट टू बी मेंबर ऑफ द टेक्निकल कमिटी आल्सो. उसमें ट्रेनिंग इंस्टीट्यूशंस विल बी अक्रेडिटेड ग्लोबली. द आइडिया इज कि ग्लोबली आयुर्वेदा एजुकेशन इज बीइंग गिवन टू सम स्टैंडर्डाइजेशन. कुछ स्टैंडर्डाइज कोर्सेज भी उसमें किए गए हैं. अगर आप उसकी वेबसाइट पे जाएंगे तो वो आपको मिल जाएगा. एंड द आइडिया इज टू सर्टिफाई ट्रेनिंग कोर्सेज all over the world,
स्कैन करके
basic Ayurveda and different kinds of
इतना
courses.
समय नष्ट मत करो, फोटो खींच कर प्रिंट कर लो.
So आप सबसे अनुरोध है कि आप ATAB वेबसाइट पर भी जाके और उसको भी देखें, और जिनका इंटरेस्ट हो उसमें ट्रेनिंग में हो इंटरेस्ट, और उसको प्रमोट करने की कोशिश करें ताकि वी कैन ऑथेंटिकेट इंडियन ऑथेंटिकेशन ऑफ ट्रेनिंग प्रोग्राम्स अराउंड द वर्ल्ड कैन बी डन. धन्यवाद.
Very right, sir. Very right, sir. Now I would like to request Dr. Madan Thangvelu, sir, for his valuable remarks. He is genome biologist and director of the Institute, International Interdisciplinary Institute for Research, Education and Skill. Welcome, sir. Welcome, sir.
Pavanji, we have 2 or 3 raise hands. Thank you for drawing me here, Pavanji. 3-4 raise hands है. एक तो है श्रीराम जी वैद्य जी का, और शायद गीत साहब का भी थोड़ा दिखाई दे रहा, और शांतनु जी त्रिपाठी जी का भी है थोड़ा. अगर इनसे
त्रिपाठी जी से आग्रह करूंगा, उनका स्पीकर ऑन है. प्लीज काइंडली गाइड अस. डॉक्टर शांतनु त्रिपाठी जी.
If it is by accident, the hand raised, then
Yeah, I think I'm audible. Am I audible?
Hanji, yeah.
Yeah, actually, I was trying to inquire from Dr. Jowhary that whether there is any scheme for the peripheral organizations or training units which are imparting training on GCP, whether government or the CDSA has a scheme to also recognize them or kind of certification for them, whether it is there.
Yes, exactly. I said that there are 2 components. GCP Professional Certification Scheme is the name of the scheme, GCP PCS, and it has 2 components.
Okay.
One, certifying individuals with knowledge of GCP based on a competence standard, which is based in turn on ICH and the CDSCO regulations, regulatory requirements. And second, to certify or accredit, whatever we call it, training institutions imparting GCP training. तो उसका अलग से criteria है. If you go to that website link, there is a separate criteria for training institutions. You are free to apply. It's open today. You can apply tomorrow if you fulfill the criteria and get evaluated and get certified.
Right. In the CDSA website, yeah.
Yes, on CDSA website.
Right. Thank you.
Maybe in the chat box, I'll just give the I'll just see the link and give it to you.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much.
Pavanji, if there are any more questions, I think Vaidya ji wants to ask some questions. Vaidya ji, namaskar ji, Shri Ram ji. आपकी तरफ से
श्री राम जी, आदरणीय वैद्य श्री राम जी, काइंडली अनम्यूट कर लीजिए.
I think Vaidya ji is having some difficulty. Telephone में कैसे unmute करना?
Dr. Geet also has raised.
Yes, sir. Sir, in addition to Anil sir, that CDSA also designed a toolkit. So every new update and everything, every new guideline will be there. So for SA, for GCP, everything. So anyone wants to refer, so they can just go to CDSA toolkit website and can read there.
Thank you.
Excellent. Great info. It will
Thank
be
you,
beneficial for all.
I have put the link on the chat box. Anybody can copy that.
Thank you. Thank you. If
डॉक्टर श्रीराम वैद्य जी कुछ बोलना चाहते थे।
हाँ जी,
आदरणीय डॉक्टर श्रीराम वैद्य जी, आप कुछ बोलना चाहें तो कृपया अपना माइक अनम्यूट करें। I hope he is not there.
okay. Shall we wait or shall?
You please continue, sir.
Thank you, Pawanji. Thank you so much. And first of all, thank you to Santanu ji for joining us today and for giving us so many valuable pointers about where we need to go for the future. Also, thank you to Anil ji for joining us today. Anil ji, namaskar. I'm delighted that you will join us, our Board of Governors, to guide us further into our journey to enable good clinical practice, good experimental, etc., etc.
आ गया करना पड़ता है सही ले आ गया ठीक
हाँ,
थोड़ा पता नहीं बैठ देख क्या रहे थे पता नहीं भगवान जाने क्या सुन रहे थे मतलब ही क्या
श्री राम जी, आपका आवाज आ गया जी।
हाँ हाँ आवाज आ गया जी आ गया
हाँ जी,
नहीं हाँ आ गया आपको आवाज आ रही है अरे नहीं बेटे बेटे हाँ जी
आ गया जी, बताओ जी।
हाँ मदन सर जी हाँ सर जी
नमस्कार जी।
हाँ नमस्कार सर नमस्कार।
आपकी तरफ से शायद कुछ सवाल या कुछ कमेंट्स थे, सुनना चाहता।
हाँ सर मेरा ऐसा निवेदन है कि मार्केट में प्योरिटी ऑफ मेडिसिन कहाँ है। एक हिंगवाष्टक में हिंग भी नहीं है प्योर और उसको हम यूज करते हैं, हमको उसका वातानुकूलन कैसे काम करेगा।
बिल्कुल जी, ये शायद पवन जी की तरफ जानी चाहिए ये सवाल।
नहीं, ये बिल्कुल आपने सही कहा। इसकी फार्मा रिसर्च पूरी क्लियर कट फार्मा रिसर्च का काम है, स्टैंडर्डाइजेशन का। और मैं जहां तक आशा करता हूं कि जितनी बड़ी कंपनियां हैं जिन पर R&D फैसिलिटी बहुत अच्छी है या क्वालिटी कंट्रोल बहुत अच्छा है, वो अवश्य इनका टेस्ट पूरा करती हैं। हाँ, ये बात सही है कि मैक्सिमम इंडस्ट्री क्वालिटी के प्रति उतनी कॉन्शियस नहीं है, लेकिन यदि बड़ी कोई इंडस्ट्री है जो वेल एस्टेब्लिश्ड इंडस्ट्री है, वो अपनी रेपुटेशन गंवाने के लिए ये लो क्वालिटी पे नहीं आएगी।
पवन जी, शायद राजीव जी अगर आपकी तरफ से कुछ हो जी इसकी।
जी सर, मेरा ये सबमिशन है कि चीजें तो सब जगह अच्छी भी हैं खराब भी हैं। हमारा सिलेक्शन और हमारा विजडम ये बताता है कि हमने क्या लेना है। एक हमारे पास सेट गाइडलाइन है, सेट स्टैंडर्ड है, हिंग के भी स्टैंडर्ड हैं, लेकिन अगर हम उस स्टैंडर्ड की हिंग लेंगे तो दिक्कत ये है। तो हमने जीसीपी इसीलिए तो है कि जीसीपी से पहले हमें जब दवाई का सिलेक्शन करते हैं तो उसका स्टैंडर्डाइजेशन करके रखना है, उसका फार्माकोपियल प्रोटोकॉल पे पहले बनाना है और बनाने के बाद फिर उसको हमने सब्जेक्ट को देना है। तो इसीलिए तो जीसीपी की आवश्यकता है कि उसको वैलिडेट करना है जो भी लिखा है। जैसे हींग में दिक्कत क्या आती है कि उसका जो अल्कोहल सोल्युबल एक्सट्रैक्टिव वैल्यू है 50 से ऊपर होना चाहिए, वो मार्केट में किसी भी हींग में नहीं मिलती है। उसकी वजह ये है कि वो कंपाउंडेड होती है, वो एक्यूडेट ना होके उसमें स्टार्च और कई तरह की कंपाउंडिंग करके उसको जो 12,000 रुपए किलो की हींग है उसको 800 और 2,000 रुपए किलो में बेचते हैं। तो ये एडल्ट्रेशन है। इसको पकड़ने के लिए ही हमने जो जीसीपी, जीएलपी और जीएनपी को इंटीग्रेट करके हमने अपने आप को वैलिडेट करना है। और शायद इसीलिए एक ये अपॉर्चुनिटी है हमारे लिए कि जो भी कमियां हैं उनको हम पकड़ के उनको शास्त्र सम्मत तरीके से वैलिडेट करके पंचेंद्रीय परीक्षा भी, आयुर्वेदिक परीक्षा भी, और इसके साथ साथ मॉडर्न पैरामीटर जिससे कि टेक्नो कमर्शियल जिसे कहते हैं ना कि हम उसको एवेल्युएट कर सकें। और फार्माकोपियल जो भी मोनोग्राफ दिए गए हैं उसमें पूरे जियोग्राफिकली अलग अलग जगह से सैंपल लेके स्टैंडर्ड बनाए हैं, वो ठीक भी हैं। बस कमी सिर्फ इतनी है कि कमर्शियलाइजेशन की वजह से कुछ लोग उसको फॉलो करते हैं, कुछ लोग उसको नहीं करते हैं। तो इसीलिए शायद जीसीपी हमारे लिए फ्यूचर में बेनिफिशियल होगा। दूसरा मैं और कहना चाहता हूँ कि आवश्यकता ही आविष्कार की जननी है। हम जानते हैं कि जीसीपी जो है वो आज क्यों आवश्यक है, जो कि आज का टॉपिक था। हमारे सभी वरिष्ठ जितने भी एक्सपर्ट हैं सब कुछ डिटेल में बता दिया। बस इसको कंक्लूड करना चाहें तो सबसे बड़ी आवश्यकता है साइंटिफिक आवश्यकता कि आज की डेट में कोई भी जो ह्यूमन सब्जेक्ट है उसकी सेफ्टी, उसकी इंटीग्रिटी, उसके बेनिफिट को हमने प्रोटेक्ट करना है। और प्रोटेक्ट करने के लिए क्लियर कट एक पॉलिसी है जिसमें कि जो हम कर रहे हैं उसको लिखना है, कोई भी हिडन नहीं रखना है, सब कुछ ट्रांसपेरेंट और ओपन रखना है। और यही एक जीसीपी है कि सब कुछ क्लियर कट हो, लिखा हुआ हो, एक प्रोटोकॉल हो, और हम कोई भी ट्रायल कर रहे हैं तो कुछ भी छिपाना नहीं है, उसको इन्फॉर्म कंसेंट लेनी है। हेंस के जो प्रिंसिपल्स हैं 13 प्रिंसिपल, उनके आधार पर हमने सारे जो भी सब्जेक्ट हैं जिन पर ट्रायल हो रहा है उसको प्रोटेक्ट करना है, नंबर 1। नंबर 2, इसका एथिकल एस्पेक्ट ये है कि लोगों को जो है सोसाइटी को उसका बेनिफिट हो, रिसर्च ऐसी हो जो सोसाइटी के लिए अच्छी हो और उसको म्यूचुअल सोसाइटी के और सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट के हिसाब से काम करा जाए। तीसरा बेनिफिट है कमर्शियल बेनिफिट, मार्केटिंग। तो आप मार्केटिंग में अगर अच्छे ट्रायल करेंगे, अच्छे सिस्टम पे करेंगे तो आप इथिकली उसको मार्केट कर पाएंगे, डॉक्टरों को अप्रोच कर पाएंगे। मार्केटिंग 2 तरह से होती है, प्रोपोगंडा बेस्ड मार्केटिंग, इथिकल मार्केटिंग। तो इथिकल मार्केटिंग के लिए आपको अच्छी रिसर्च चाहिए, फिर उसके पब्लिकेशन चाहिए। तो पब्लिकेशन लाने के लिए जीसीपी एक बहुत मस्त है। चौथा है इसका रेगुलेशन एंड इन्फोर्समेंट एस्पेक्ट। तो इन्फोर्समेंट और रेगुलेशन, जब भी कोई हम नया ड्रग बनाते हैं, कोई भी रिसर्च ड्रग को अप्रूव करते हैं, फेजेज में जाते हैं, तो उसके लिए जब तक हमारे पास जीसीपी, जीएलपी और जीएपी के डेटा नहीं होंगे, तब तक हम उसको रिसर्च को अप्रूव ही नहीं करा पाएंगे, प्रोडक्ट को हम इंटरनेशनली ग्लोबल मार्केट में ला ही नहीं पाएंगे। तो इसका सबसे बड़ा जो एस्पेक्ट और एंगल है जीसीपी के एप्लीकेशन का, कि इसको ग्लोबली ग्लोबलाइज करना है, ड्रग को वैलिडेट करना, साइंटिफिक करना। तो मुझे लगता है कि जीसीपी इज ओनली की फॉर द टुडे टाइम to sustain the entire global market. So I think this is the unique platform जिसमें कि हम लोगों को नॉलेज शेयरिंग के माध्यम से एक उसके लिए अवेयर करेंगे। धन्यवाद।
Thank you, Rajiv ji. I think you have addressed many of the questions in the mind of Anil ji or Santanu ji, Tripathi ji ने जो बताया. I think you have touched all those points, and thank you so much for elaborating कि आयुर्वेद और आयुष यूनिवर्सिटी की तरफ से, उत्तराखंड आयुर्वेद यूनिवर्सिटी की तरफ से आपकी contribution is very, very important. Geet, your hand is still raised. If you wish to add a little more, we welcome some thoughts. Geet ji, if that is
सर आपका अंगवेलू सर जी, आपका फोन नंबर हो तो मिल जाएगा क्या?
बिल्कुल जी, बिल्कुल डाल दें। यही अभी
हाँ सर,
अभी डाल दें जी।
हाँ जी।
हमारी तरफ से I want to thank all the contributors today. कि you have highlighted some key points. Anil ji, thank you for being with us, and Shantanu ji, thank you for being with us. I'm taking Pawan ji's permission to share a few slides just to review what is in my mind, और आगे just थोड़ा सा अगर if I want to convey a few ideas just to resonate with what Shantanu ji raised and where we can bring more synergy into our activities if we have a little more background information, thoda sa agar ho, or what is the reason for these discussions, or where do we want to take these discussions in the future. And Pawan ji thoda batana ji agar hamara आ गया कि नहीं. I'm just displaying थोड़ा 3-4 नहीं 10-15 स्लाइड अगर दिखाएं तो थोड़ा सा आसानी रहेगा जी. तो this is where पवन जी थोड़ा बताना जी हमारा स्लाइड आ गया कि नहीं. This is
आ गया सर,
आ गया
ये this is what Shantanu ji initially pointed out, कि experiential knowledge and experiential disciplines. अब इसके ऊपर रिसर्च कैसे करें? This is where I have distilled all the thinking कि when we look in our marketplace, and what Rajiv ji just mentioned, कि global health dialogues के अंदर अगर जाना हो, thoda sa we need a little more seriousness in our work. And on this image, I have just distilled where we are now. कि हमने तो कर दिया ग्रीन एसेंशियल्स करके, ग्रीन सबको ग्रीन लगा दिया, ब्लिस्टर पैक को भी ग्रीन कर दिया, कहीं भी कुछ भी ले लो उसको ग्रीन कैप्सूल बना दिया. एंड दैट इज वेयर वी आर सिटिंग इन टर्म्स ऑफ आवर product development. Yes, occasionally there are some good products, but the standards are questionable. Shantanu ji has very rightly said that there may be difficulty कि you have made a product, there will be batch-to-batch variation, there will be difficulties in taking those batches into big clinical trials, क्योंकि halfway through your clinical trial, you have to change your batch and your standard might be different. So we have to harmonize that. And I think that is important for growing and taking whatever we have, this knowledge, to the global arena, global dialogues. And India is in a very strong position for many, many reasons. The COVID problem is telling us we are in a very strong position to engage in that global dialogue. And for the other simple reason, healthcare expenses everywhere is increasing. In America, which has the worst COVID statistics, mortality statistics, they have the world's most expensive health budget. Almost 20% of the GDP is going towards health. Only their arms and ammunition industry, the military industrial complex, has budgets greater than the health budget. So that is the state. And this is an opportunity, and the world is looking to India. And Rajiv ji has mentioned about the Sustainable Development Goals. These are all part of the narrative, and these are all opportunities. Discussions going on, and we have to engage in those discussions. And to be there and be effective, we must bring a good narrative. And the first important question in that narrative is, what is this thing called Ayurveda, and how is Ayurvedic knowledge possible? Now, what can be told is that the essence of Ayurveda, yes, it is experiential, which means it is based on something that is happening around us. And the scholars till now have said, if you can observe and experience what is going on around you every day, then you can understand Ayurveda. But that somehow is not satisfactory. And I think Shantanu ji very rightly touched on that point early on. That the other point is that reductionist analysis, like what we are doing with DNA and genes and chemicals and this, is only adding details to this. So this is a bit of a difficult one for a lot of people to digest, particularly in the modern medicine, modern biology area. That we have said, on one hand, that everyday experience will make you understand Ayurveda. And on the other hand, you're saying reductionist knowledge is only adding to these details. Please clarify this for us. So the question is, do we do science for Ayurveda, or do you take Ayurveda to help lead science? And there are many people who have been engaged in this area. Here is Bhushan Patwardhanji, who was for some time vice chair of the University Grants Commission, and now director of the Integrative Health Center Institute in Pune University. And I put this up here, again, repeating the question, science for Ayurveda or Ayurveda for science? This debate needs to be resolved. And in the back, on the poster, there is a big poster there in the back of Bhushanji's image there, which is about systems Ayurveda. And it uses the systems biology graphical notation that was published sometime back in Nature Biotechnology. And it has used those principles to show how is Ayurveda, what is the conceptual foundation and logic of Ayurveda. और इसके बीच में ये जो purple जगह, this purple area, यहाँ पे I don't know if you can see it, यहाँ पे लिखा हुआ swasthya. That is the foundation, you know, that's a very deep philosophical point. क्या चीज़ है swasthya? और वहाँ से you have Nidan, you have so many other principles that come into it, but the connections are very logical. A lot of people in modern science today, in India, modern medicine people also in India, are unfamiliar with this logic that is available. And thanks to Bhushanji, Girish Tillu, Bhushan Patwardhan Vaidya ji, Ashok ji Vaidya ji, or G. Gangadhar ji. They put together all these ideas together with the FRLST Foundation for Revitalization of Local Health Tradition in Bangalore. They have put together this schematic. And from this schematic, we can understand the deep, deep, deep principles that are there in Ayurveda. And Ayurveda then demands you to look at every individual as a unique individual. जो हम कहते हैं n equals 1, और उसके उस तरफ जाओ आपके, you have to go from n equals 1, that is one individual, जो प्रकृति concept use करके, every individual is unique. There's a big difficulty here, is every individual is unique. How do you do an experiment? Santanu ji has raised this issue. Our presenters have also touched on this issue. How do we do experiments if every individual is unique? Now, there is nothing wrong with this concept because that is what DNA biology is telling us today. Every genome is different. Every individual has a different genome. Even identical twins, if you look closely, the genomes are different. Ayurveda कहता है, don't stop at n equals 1, but go beyond. This is the very reason for Ayurveda. You have to look instead of structures, just look at processes. And in fact, that is what the human body and that is what all life is. Life is just a collection of processes, infra, sub, hypo, ultra, super, hyper process. They are all going on. And Ayurveda over the thousands of years has refined that thinking and that logic based on the different darshanas, based on Sankhya, Vaisheshika, Nyaya, Yoga, Mimamsa. They have put all of these, drawn all the best thinking together to give us a logic and a set of terms, Dhatu, Shrotas, Paramanu, Deha Paramanu, etc., etc. They have given us all these kind of logic. Now, if you don't understand information like this as shown in Systems Ayurveda, if you don't understand that, and then you try to see how to do an experiment or a clinical trial, then there is always a sort of conflict here, and this causes difficulty. So what are we going to do? What do we do with this Vata, Pitta, Kapha? How can we integrate this with modern biology? And this is very important because there are many areas where we are looking for personalized, predictive, preventive, participatory, and precision medicine. The world's #1 killer, cardiovascular disease. Agar iske andar jao, how can you understand this disease? Because this disease takes many years to manifest and evolve. And how can you then prevent this disease? Ayurveda says you can actually do these things. And there are many initiatives. This instance, a meeting held in 1996 in Trivandrum at the Department of Cardiology, sponsored by the World Health Organization and the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, on looking at cardiovascular disease prevention. Kerala is a very special part of the world because you see very high incidence of cardiovascular disease in very young people. There are many people who have bypass surgeries even at the age of 40 years. So there are many reasons why as a nation we need to understand, and globally this is the biggest killer. We need to understand. And it seems like Ayurveda has many messages here. When we look at today's narratives, we have mostly a disease-centric narrative. Disease-based and how to cure the disease. Much of what I think we have heard today, and if I interpret this correctly, it is tending towards that difficulty. We are looking at a disease, how to do a trial, how to cure the disease, whether it works. Some people say it might not be adequate, but that is the thinking. Can we widen that dialogue into health promotion, health maintenance, disease prevention? Yes, of course, and new cures also. Can we widen that, and can we do experiments in this area? And the logic and the grammar that is required for this is what Ayurveda offers us. Now, let me give you finest details in 1 or 2 slides here. The Ayurveda has a concept called Ritucharya. Ritucharya is very important for all of Ayurveda, where it says that the year between one Sankranti to the next Sankranti is divided into 6 ritus, approximately 2 months each. Now, If you come into the Western calendar system, January to December, we understand. And if you take the best of modern biology techniques, in this instance, expression of specific genes, and you map the expression of genes according to the months. So months automatically implies also ritus. And you look, say, if we now know the human genome, we know how many genes there are. In this instance, they have taken 4,000 protein coding genes, and they have just randomly taken the months and taken blood samples from individuals for the different months and sampled. And what do we see? A change in expression of the genes for some genes with the seasons, with the months. Some genes don't change in their expression, but some genes increase in expression and then decrease in expression as the season goes towards the winter months. And when they look at these genes, what they find, it is mostly the immune system genes that are changing here. Now, this is very consistent with this aspect of Ritucharya and how we can, Ayurveda has discovered many ways in which you can intervene. You can come in and do things, and they say it gives you a certain kind of resistance to whatever. The dosha is changing at specific seasons, and when you do these interventions, you can get resistance to it. Now, when we bring the two systems together, modern biology and the Ritucharya thinking, and concepts, rich concepts called Ritu Sandhi, when two ritus are shifting. What do you have to do between the two ritus? 1 week before the change of ritu and 1 week after the change of ritu. What do you have to do? Dietary, mostly dietary recommendations are made. Now, keep in mind the dietary aspect. I will come back to this. These genes are known. And when we look at them in fine details, the certain genes that express 9 out of 16 genes are genes that control the clock within every cell. They are called the clock genes. The details are available on that paper. I won't go into this, but it's understandable why we might have a change in the immune health of a person or change in other aspects of the body. What Ayurveda approximately calls as changes in the dosha with the seasons. Now, what is interesting is it is not only found, these changes are not only found in the blood cells, which are easiest cells to sample, but also in the adipose tissue, the place, the fat aspect, what Ayurveda calls as the Medadhatu. So there is good congruence of this knowledge systems, what the ancients described using Sanskrit terms like Ritucharya, and what modern biology sees as gene expression. Now, I talked about the new concepts that are needed, where we might want to do experiments, health promotion, health maintenance, disease prevention, and maybe new ways of curing disease. There is a lot of need for this. And there are many initiatives. The WHO is encouraging growth of the traditional medicine area. And when we look around the world, China, of course, has a very big role in that area. But the equally strong role is offered by India. India has the most diverse systems of medicine. We have Ayush, the Ayush systems, that is Ayurveda, Yoga, Unani, Siddha, homeopathy, Tibetan medicine, naturopathy. There is no other country, maybe Iran has certain ways, systems that correspond to this, but India offers this diversity. So some discussions are now going on between organizations here in Europe, the European Ayurveda Association, the Medical University of Graz, the Physiology Department, and the French group based in Dijon, the French National Institute for Health and Medical Research. And the discussions are going on with All India Institute of Medical Science in New Delhi. This is part of our meeting in 2019, 31st of January, 1st of February, asking the question, physiology for good health and prevention of non-communicable diseases. And what is the next generation of physiology that we need to understand? So when we look at all of this, there is a lot of overlap between what Ayurveda has some thinking and what modern biology is showing us, and an opportunity to bring all of these together. They are all consistent. Modern biology, most times, is only validating that Ayurveda knowledge, but somehow that language of Ayurveda, the terms and the way they understand it, is not completely understood by the modern biology, the modern medicine people. I'm hoping that dialogues like what is going on now between Uttarakhand Ayurveda University and All India Institute of Medical Science, Rishikesh, or in this instance, the School of Advanced Research in Ayurveda, Fundamental Research in Ayurveda at the Kerala University of Health Science. These are all areas where we can start to see the sprouts of initiatives for the future coming up. Now, I mentioned briefly something about diet and impact on health, which is one of the central aspects of Ayurveda. And I want to highlight here what I was offered this morning by Professor Bishnupriya ji here. I think she is with us here in the audience. And she asks a very simple question. Based on this dosha dhatu mala siddhant of Ayurveda. Now, this might not be known to even the modern medicine people in India, but it's a very common thinking in Ayurveda. Bishnupriya ji goes on to ask a very simple question: journey from constipation to Parkinson's disease. Now, is GI tract health a major issue leading to neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's disease? If so, what is the connection? This is the kind of interesting research questions that can go into many of our Ayurveda institutions, like the CCRAS institutions, or to the All India Institute of Ayurveda, or to the Ayurveda colleges across the country, or to even the modern medicine institutions. And the question here is a very simple one. And I just want to see if I can touch on a few points to show what is the beauty of this concept, the dosha dhatu mala siddhant, and how it might actually be consistent with what is understood in Ayurveda. Vishnupriya ji also shared some information this morning about this proposed IIT Jodhpur Center of Ayurtech to enhance contemporary viability of Ayurveda. How to make it more contemporary, and clearly that will involve bringing together all these different disciplines. Now, I want here flash this very quickly to show how does Tridosha Panjabhuta Dosha Dhatu Mala Siddhanta and other Ayurvedic knowledge, Ayurveda insights, how can that knowledge inform concepts like neuroinflammation, neurodegeneration research and aspects of this? And I flagged this here, Francisco Quintana's lab in Harvard. I will come back to this image, but I just want to show you how this connection will be. And secondly, I want to put this in the context of COVID-19, this ongoing pandemic, and how some insights that is coming from the microbes that are in our nasopharynx here, and the understanding that's coming from the microbes in the nasopharynx, how that actually is consistent not only with the aspects of the immunology, aspects of the pituitary, hypothalamus, adrenal axis, and aspects of COVID prevention, and so many things that are all connected together, and it's completely consistent with Ayurvedic knowledge and with modern biology knowledge. And how can we approach this using contemporary pharmacology thinking? Shown here are details that are coming out from the University of Perugia in the Department of Medicine and Surgery and Otolaryngology, and they have published some thinking about what happens when the microbes in your nasopharynx, this region shown in the green box, how dysbiosis of the nasopharyngeal microbes, how that causes an imbalance in the tryptophan pathway, both in the host and in the microbes, that leads, the tryptophan is a very simple amino acid that's important for formation of tryptophan and serotonin, etc., leading to very important serotonin, melatonin, all that the modern biology and modern medicine people understand, pharmacologists understand, or a branch enzyme. If that gets destabilized, it leads down this path called the kynurenine pathway. And what they found when they looked at the patient sera for COVID-19 people is that pathway is activated. Now they took that lead and they started to examine what happens in this space. And they find what is very interesting, that you get destabilization of fatty acid metabolism because the microbes in the nose is destabilized. high interleukin-6 levels, etc., etc. So many things that are correlated with COVID-19 infection. Now, is this something that is alien to Ayurveda, something that is only unique to modern medicine and pharmacology, or can it be linked to other conditions? Shown here, finer details of how that mechanism plays out. And this is just one of the many images in a paper called Alteration of Kynurenic Acid Metabolism in both Primary, Periphery and Brain, as described by several pathologic states in humans. And the link they are making is towards inflammation-related diseases. And that ranges from type 2 diabetes, multiple sclerosis, irritable bowel disease, or chronic kidney disease. In all these instances, this chemical comes to use, the kynurenic acid. And in Ayurveda, they seem to have somehow understood all these things, and they recommend a very simple procedure, nasya. Nasya is a very standard procedure in Ayurveda. Thousands and thousands of nasya preparation installations, nasya treatments are going on across the country. What is disappointing is that a majority of the people in the modern medicine institutions don't understand, don't even know that there is a simple procedure of instilling medicated oil in your nostril that might actually lead to the whole process of reducing neuroinflammation, leading to perhaps possibly even some neurodegeneration, and way to approach this. And that research is going on in Harvard. And I feel these are areas where we can look into the future. Now, in terms of standards, Vaidyaji asked a very important question, that we have formulations which don't even contain the so-called herbs and ingredients that are meant to be in there. Here is Anutailam, one of the formulations that is used routinely for nasya. And when you look at this, you have a huge number of 24, 27 herbs are here. Now, how do we know whether these herbs are there in a formulation that's produced by any company? I think there is a need for standards. Shantanuji very early on said, we've got to standardize these things. It is not a challenge, but it can be done. Now, what is the level of standardization you want to do? I take one example here that talks about goat milk here. Now, goat milk, you might then say, well, which breed of goat? Do we use Jamunapara? Do we use something else? Which goat milk do you use? There are differences in the quality of the milk that comes from different breeds of goats. Yes, we can go on to optimize all of these things. Now, the thing to keep in mind is this huge formulation, this amazing formulation that provides you possibly a way to manage neuroinflammation, which is the start of neurodegenerative diseases, is described many thousands of years ago in Ashtanga Hridaya. Now, if we haven't done our homework to realize the potential, the global potential for this formulation and a simple intervention, then I think we will lose a lot. But this initiative that Pawanji has brought about, I hope will make us a little more sensitive to looking at complex formulations and how to standardize them. Rajivji already gave us a pointer to how we standardize these things. Now, let me take you to the slightly more difficult area. I hope I've shown you how the two areas overlap in such a wonderful way, starting with dinacharya, ritucharya, inflammation, and pro-inflammatory profile, gene profile during the change of seasons, how that connects to the logic of Ritu Sandhi, how there are certain dietary interventions that are offered at the time of Ritu Sandhi that people are recommended. In Kerala, there is a procedure called Karkaraga Chikitsa, where 20, 30 herbs are used in making a kanji, a rice porridge, and all these are put together and taken. We have never understood why we use this, why we should follow this, but looks like it will have a way to rebalance some imbalance that's going on in the clock genes that is going to upset the immune system in some way, or the epithelial cells or the adipose cells tissue. But something is going on, and we have a way to intervene. And when we come into the slightly more subtle area, This is one example of marma points that are very, very well understood in Ayurveda, yoga, and the Siddha disciplines. Now, when we look at the anatomy, I showed you earlier, when we look at the anatomy of where the nasopharynx sits and where the pituitary sits, it sits in a very close to each other. There's a very thin bone that separates these two, and you can actually start to speculate whether nasya, the oils and the active ingredients, will balance the microbiome, not only balance the microbiome, but also provide certain chemicals that are taken up by the local circulatory system and sent up towards the pituitary to develop some form of tissue rebalancing. And very importantly, all of that thinking is there in our thinking of marmas. And when we move a little beyond that and go closer to the world of yoga, we see what are described as the chakras. And these are said to be energy points. We don't know what that energy is, but it seems like there is some kind of biomagnetic kind of control in some part of the body, which is the thinking shown on the left and the right-hand side seems to be much more richer, but consistent with the contemporary medicine perspective of the anatomy, of the neuroanatomy, etc. There is immense room for dialogue between these two areas. And there is much more to be discovered. Now, what is the big problem here? As Shantanuji very early he mentioned, one narrative has grown around us over the past many years. And that narrative has given a feeling of convenience, of high standards, etc., etc., and they have captured huge markets. Shown here is just the research and development in investment for the top 20 companies in the year 2015-16. A huge amount, $115 billion is their annual. Now, when we take that figure and we compare it against India's healthcare budget, I've shown this number here for 2020-21, India's entire healthcare budget is less than $10 billion. And the Ministry of Ayush's budget is only somewhere around just under $300 million. Now look at these figures and see the challenge that we are faced with. What are we expecting to achieve here with quantum of funding and the contrast in the quantum of funding? I can go on to comment on a lot about this, but I will leave it here. I think these are numbers we must keep in mind. On one hand, we have potential in the Ayush systems that has an opportunity to grab key problems in the Western world and around the world, like cardiovascular disease or hypertension or neurodegenerative age-related diseases. And on the other hand, we have companies' research budgets, huge amounts of money that's going into researching, and most times offering little health benefits. You know, they're all investing huge amounts of money. And in the middle is India with a health budget, entire health budget of less than $10 billion, which is less than the research budgets of the 3 top pharma companies. There are huge corrections that need to be made. And maybe more dialogue with those companies or something. Big areas like cancer, these are the big growth areas. And we look in here, they are all proposing biologicals. These are all monoclonal antibodies. And they are very clever. They are very clever at understanding markets. They're very clever at marketing. And somehow, even though the products don't give you any benefit, they have captured markets. This is a big challenge for us that we need to work and most of all appreciate these challenges. Now, I discovered this little one for more recent data, 2021 data, total revenue from pharmaceutical segment in billions of dollars. You can see the numbers here, you know, all the companies that are here. I just sat around just to make a small table here about just for these companies, the top 10 companies. I haven't got some figures for Takeda. I've done 2 things. This is the total assets for these companies and the total number of employees they have for these top 10 companies. Based on this chart, you can do similar calculations for any of the other ways in which you assess the value of these companies. I point this out just to give you some figures here. Now, they have a total asset value of about 1.1, maybe 1.5 trillion. Let us say $1.5 trillion is the total assets of these 10 companies. They employ about 800,000 people. This is the total employment of these companies. Now these, just a small team, relatively small teams, can manage such incredible presence in global markets. And this is one of the challenges that we have when we talk about clinical research, when we talk about getting our systems together, our community together, building wonderful research teams. This is the challenge that we must keep in mind. If we want to reach into those markets, then we have to get our house in order. We have to do so many things that need to come up to those global standards. Statistics for Europe, the European Federation of Pharmaceutical Industries and Association, about 2,000 pharmaceutical companies that operate in Europe. So this include all the sales team, etc., etc. You will see for Europe, that number is somewhere around 800,000 people. That is the entire team going from sales, not just research and not just the value of the drugs alone. And these are challenges for us, you know, and maybe there is an opportunity for India at the government level, at the central government level, to initiate dialogues between the Indian government and the European Union, and perhaps also dialogues with Japan or dialogues with America, to enable new narratives, enable a new way of engaging in this space, because I feel, and most of you here also feel the same way, that Ayurveda holds many opportunities for all those diseases for the future. Most of all, those three untouched areas of health promotion, health maintenance, and disease prevention. Now, yesterday we talked about this network, a very large network. You can locate the details at the International Good Clinical Practice Network. We are watching them, we are learning from them, and as we go along, we will learn much more. So, to finish off, I just want to show you this little illustration here. The green blister packing, we need to go beyond that. And going beyond that will involve primarily, there won't be a conflict in this space where both the systems, the ancient system and the modern system, agree. There is no problem there, you know, hygiene, sanitation, all these things, everybody agrees, you know, we got to improve, etc. And we'll do things. Certain areas, growing better plants, etc., better good agriculture practice, we will work on that. We know how to do that. We've had contributions from people who are looking at how to bring good agriculture practice around large strategic areas like the national capital region, NCR area, with the states from Rajasthan, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, all coming together, different districts coming together, and strategically very important. So all that can be done in this sector. There are two sectors here, diagonally running left to right, where let us say if this axis is ancient medicine and this is modern medicine, there are some areas where there is a bit of conflict between these two, where Ayurveda, Yoga, Unani, Siddha all agree, all seem to accept that we have a procedure. For instance, Nasya. We say Nasya works for us, or Basti works for us, or Panchakarma works for us, etc., etc. There are so many things, and modern medicine doesn't know about this. So there are areas here where we need to come together and learn a little more and how to solve, how to make a dialogue happen. The top right-hand quadrant, there are many practices in modern medicine, in good pharmacology procedures, in good biochemistry. For instance, we can measure kynurenic acid in the serum. And Ayurveda says, what is kynurenic acid? We don't understand. There is a way to come together. There is a way to come together and say, okay, kynurenic acid is a potential marker for instability in the human body. It could be produced by the microbiome. What happens to kynurenic acid levels in serum before Panchakarma, following Panchakarma, before Nasya, after Nasya? So we can have that kind of a dialogue, and we can bring the two together and achieve a very strong position, very strong position, in that we can validate our understanding that is from Ayurveda. Vishnu Priya ji here has told us so many subtleties. She has told us about the concept of ama. Ama is a concept that is very rich and richly understood in Ayurveda, but not appreciated in modern biology. And yesterday she gave us some understanding about ama that comes from instability of Vata, Pitta, Kapha. And they have, Ayurveda has a way to measure these things. Now, why not a dialogue between modern medicine and Ayurveda to understand how to reinterpret the Ayurvedic concepts and bring it to the benefit of the patient, benefit for the common man in rural India. Yesterday I said, you know, a simple, the small state Madhya Pradesh, I wouldn't say a small state, but the state of Madhya Pradesh has 55,000 villages. Uttar Pradesh has 97,000 villages. India as an entirety has about 660,000 plus villages. How do we get health to these people? Can we validate some of Ayurvedic knowledge? Can we show how a simple procedure of a set of herbs, you know, maybe amla plus haridra, amla plus turmeric can give you a very simple remedy, and maybe we will understand the mechanism of action of these things via readjustment of the gut microbes or whatever that is, you know, and we will be able to measure it using kynurenolic acid levels. And there are many, many opportunities for that kind of engagement, but our focus must be from the two extremes, touching the villages of India, the 70,000 villages of India, and touching every country of the world. So we are reaching that. And finally, Pawanji, I don't know if my slides are moving. I'm just talking to my slides.
No, slides are moving, sir. Your slides are moving.
Okay, and finally, that last sector, which I am particularly excited about, is that subtle area, the subtle area of shrotas, that is understood in yoga, in marma chikitsa, and bringing all of that into our frontline research areas. So, Pawanji, that is what I wanted to say. Every day I seem to use the same slide, but my message seems to be based on what our presenters are offering us. And I leave it there. I'm so happy that Anilji is here with us. I'm so happy that Jagdishwarji is here with us, happy that Vishnupriyaji is here with us today, and hope this will become part of our future discussions. So, Pawanji, thank you very much. I've taken more than my fair share of time today, but I just want to leave these ideas, at least it's recorded now, because every time it's much easier for us to revisit these recordings, and then people can ask questions, they can come back to me. Sriramji wanted my telephone number. Sriramji, I'm putting my telephone number here in my chat box.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Now I would like to request Professor V.K. Agnihotriji for his concluding remarks. Professor V.K. Agnihotriji. Am I audible to you, Agnihotriji? Yes. Welcome, Dr. Agnihotriji. I hope he is not, I am not audible to him. So welcome, and thank you. Tomorrow is National Technology Day. So we are inviting two experts for National Technology Day. Dr. Sanjay Chhajed for Pulse Technology and Dr. Kuldeep Raj for Arshogram. He has made Arshogram for piles. I don't know what technology is that. So thank you all. Good night. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Anilji, thank you. Sir, thank you.
Anilji, namaskar. Vishnupriya ji, namaskar ji.
नमस्कार विष्णुप्रिया जी,
नमस्कार. I hope.
अग्निहोत्री जी आपकी झलक दिखी? अग्निहोत्री जी, हरिओम, आपकी झलक दिखी? आपका संक्षिप्त वैलिडेटरी रिमार्क्स इफ पॉसिबल. नहीं है पॉसिबल, ट्रेन में है वो मेरे ख्याल से अभी. थैंक यू. गुड नाइट टू ऑल.
Good night.